On October 1st, 2017, a warm Sunday night in Las Vegas, thousands of people gathered at the Route 91 Harvest Festival, singing, dancing, and enjoying the music. It was supposed to be a night of joy, a night to remember. Then, gunfire. At first, people thought it was fireworks. The music kept playing, but within seconds, the screams drowned out the sound of the band. Bullets rained down from above. People dropped to the ground. Some ran, others froze. Confusion turned into chaos. In just 10 minutes, Las Vegas became a war zone. It was the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. And behind it all, one man, a man no one expected. His name, Stephen Paddock. But the real question is, why did he do it? Welcome back to Timeless Tale. It was 10:05 p.m. A single crack echoed through the night. Some thought it was fireworks, maybe part of the show. But then came another, and another. Within seconds, the air was filled with rapid, deafening bursts. The music stopped. People turned their heads, confused. Then came the screams. From the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, bullets rained down like a violent storm. At first, many didn't understand what was happening. Some thought the sound was part of the concert. Others assumed it was a speaker malfunction. But when bodies started falling, the horrifying truth became clear. They were under attack. Panic spread like wildfire. Thousands of people scattered in every direction. Some ran for the exits. Others dropped to the ground, trying to take cover behind fences, food stands, or even each other. The crowd was so dense that there was no clear way out. People trampled over one another, desperate to escape. The shooter fired relentlessly. He had a clear, elevated view of the festival grounds. Every time a wave of people rushed in one direction, another round of bullets forced them back. There was no safe place, no way to fight back. Some tried to help the wounded, pressing their hands against bleeding wounds, whispering words of comfort. Others could do nothing but run and pray they wouldn't be next. The sounds of sirens mixed with the screams, creating a chilling symphony of terror. For 10 agonizing minutes, the shooter unleashed over 1,000 rounds into the helpless crowd. 10 minutes that felt like an eternity. Then, silence. The gunfire stopped. The shooter had vanished from sight. But the horror he left behind was impossible to erase. The final toll? 60 lives lost. Over 400 wounded by bullets. Hundreds more injured in the chaos. What had just happened? Who was responsible for this nightmare? No one knew yet. But soon the world would hear the name Stephen Paddock, a name that would haunt Las Vegas forever. The killer. Who was Stephen Paddock? Stephen Paddock wasn't a name known to law enforcement. No criminal record, no history of violence, nothing that suggested he was capable of such destruction. Yet on October 1st, 2017, he carried out the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. So who was he? At 64 years old, Paddock was a retired accountant, a real estate investor, and a professional gambler. He had money, owned multiple homes, and spent much of his time at casinos, playing high-stakes video poker. By all appearances, he was just another wealthy, quiet man who kept to himself. His family was just as shocked as the rest of the world. His brother, stunned, told reporters, he was just a guy who played video poker and took cruises. There were no signs of a troubled past. No history of mental illness, no clear motive. But the truth was far more chilling. Investigators discovered that Paddock had been planning the attack for months. He had stockpiled weapons, modified his rifles for rapid fire, and even set up cameras inside and outside his hotel room to monitor the hallways. Every detail was premeditated. He booked his suite at the Mandalay Bay Hotel days before the shooting. He smuggled in 23 high-powered rifles, bringing them up piece by piece to avoid suspicion. And when the moment came, he locked himself in that room and unleashed terror on thousands of innocent people. Yet even with all this planning, he left no explanation. No manifesto, no suicide note, no final words. To this day, his motive remains a mystery. A man with no history of violence had orchestrated one of the most horrifying attacks in American history, and no one knows why. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment attack. It was an execution planned to perfection. For months, Stephen Paddock had been preparing, carefully, quietly. He started stockpiling weapons, legally purchasing over 55 firearms in the year leading up to the attack. Many of them were high-powered rifles, modified with bump stocks to fire like fully automatic weapons. Along with the guns, he collected thousands of rounds of ammunition in high-capacity magazines. But he didn't stop there. Paddock researched ballistics, sniper positions, and past mass shootings. He studied the Route 91 Harvest Festival, the layout, the crowd size, and the best vantage points. And he didn't just rely on internet searches. Investigators later found that he had booked hotel rooms overlooking other large events in cities like Chicago and Boston, possibly scoping out other targets. Then came the final phase, execution. On September 25, 2017, nearly a week before the attack, Paddock checked into the Mandalay Bay Hotel. He specifically chose a corner suite on the 32nd floor, giving him an unobstructed view of the festival grounds. Over the next few days, he transported bags and bags of weapons and ammunition up to his room. To avoid suspicion, he brought them in gradually, 10 suitcases one day, another 6 the next. The hotel staff didn't ask questions. Inside his suite, he set up his killing ground. He placed rifles at different angles by the windows, ensuring he had multiple firing positions. He even installed security cameras, one in the peephole of his door and another on a food cart outside the room, so he could see anyone approaching. Every detail was calculated. Every step was deliberate. On the night of October 1st, he waited until 10:05 p.m., when the festival crowd was at its peak. Then he smashed out 2 windows with a hammer, and hell began. As law enforcement closed in, Paddock did something no one expected. He took his own life. When SWAT teams finally breached his hotel room, they found him dead on the floor, a gunshot wound to the head. Surrounding him were 23 rifles, stacks of ammunition, and a note filled with calculations, angles, distances, bullet trajectories. But nowhere in that room was the answer to the biggest question of all. Why? No manifesto, no explanation, no demands. The FBI launched one of the most extensive investigations in U.S. history, interviewing hundreds of people, his family, his girlfriend, casino workers, even his doctors. But no clear motive ever surfaced. Paddock wasn't driven by religious extremism. He had no political agenda, no history of violent behavior, no financial struggles. He was a wealthy man with no apparent reason to unleash such horror. In their final report, the FBI admitted they might never understand why he did it. And that's what makes this massacre even more terrifying. Most killers leave a trail, anger, hatred, and ideology. But Stephen Paddock left nothing. He was a man who spent his life in casinos, who lived in luxury, who gave no warning signs, until the moment he became a mass murderer. The 2017 Las Vegas shooting remains one of the most senseless acts of violence in modern history, and the world may never know why it happened. The Vegas shooting shook the world, but it also reignited a heated debate. In the aftermath, people demanded answers. How could one man get his hands on so many weapons? How did he go unnoticed while planning something so deadly? And most importantly, could this have been prevented? The attack exposed deep cracks in gun laws and security measures. Paddock had purchased his weapons legally. He had no criminal record, no red flags. And yet he had managed to turn a hotel room into a sniper's nest without raising suspicion. The use of bump stocks, which allowed his rifles to fire at near automatic speed, became a major point of controversy. Within months, the U.S. government banned them, one of the few legal changes that came from the tragedy. But beyond that, little changed. Mass shootings didn't stop. They continued. Parkland, El Paso, Buffalo, Uvalde. Each time the same cycle: shock, outrage, debate, and then silence. The Vegas massacre wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning, a reminder of how fragile safety truly is, a reminder that in just 10 minutes, the world can change forever. And yet the same questions remain unanswered. How do we stop this from happening again? Or worse, what if we never can? A tragedy that still haunts America. October 1st, 2017 was supposed to be a night of music, laughter, and memories. But in just 10 minutes, it became one of the darkest nights in American history. 58 lives were stolen. Hundreds more were left scarred. physically, emotionally, forever changed. And for those who survived, the echoes of that night still follow them. The sound of gunfire, the screams, the helplessness. Some wounds heal, others never do. The tragedy of Las Vegas wasn't just about that one night. It was a wake-up call, a reminder of how fragile life is, how in an instant everything can shatter. And yet, the biggest question still remains. How do we stop this from happening again? No one knows if we ever will. But what we do know is that the stories of those lost deserve to be remembered. If you found this story important, subscribe to Timeless Tales, where we bring you the stories that the world should never forget.